All right, good evening and welcome to our online town hall meeting for the Budget 2013. I'm Paul Listick from WGN News. I'm going to be the moderator this evening. My job is to basically field the questions that I see on Twitter, the hashtag being Tell Toni, Telltoni, and as you type them in and send us, they will come up live right in front of me. My job is to go through them and ask them. And I will say, as moderator, I have no bend here, positive, negative, or otherwise. I'm going to ask the good, the bad, and the ugly as the questions come up, pose them all. I may rephrase some things just for the sake of brevity, but we'll be doing that. In addition, we've been gathering many questions and comments from people on the website that's been going on for the last couple of days, so we'll kick off with some of those as we allow you some time to send in your questions now on Twitter. Once again, the hashtag Tell Toni is the way you want to do it during this online event. That's what will come up right in front of me, live time. We're not going to waste any time with me babbling. We're going to get right on to questions and comments. First, let me introduce the person responsible for wanting to bring this event to you and let you be involved in the budgeting process, the president of the Cook County Board, and that is President Toni Preckwinkle.
Good evening, and thank you very much, Paul. I'm really grateful to you for your willingness to moderate this event tonight.
My pleasure.
And I'm grateful, of course, to all of you out there who are willing to spend some time with us thinking about the budget for Cook County. You know, when I first came in office in December of 2010, we faced a real crisis. We walked in the door and there was a $487 million gap that we had to close in 2 months and then get the budget passed in that third month. We were able to do that. It was extremely difficult. It was a shared sacrifice across the board. As soon as we finished our first budget, we started on the second year's budget so that we could get it done before the fiscal year started. The deficit then was $315. So we had a deficit of about $800 million in our first two budgets that we had to close. This year, our budget deficit is about $268 million. So we face another tough, difficult year trying to balance the budget. And we're looking for help and support. We're looking for your ideas about cutting expenses. We're looking for your ideas about raising revenues. And we're not only asking our residents, we're asking our separately elected officials, we're asking our employees, we're asking everybody. And we're asking you to get your ideas in as quickly as possible so that we can vet them in time for the budget, the final budget, which is due out in October. So again, I'm very grateful to all of you for joining us tonight. I'm grateful to Paul for moderating. I'm grateful to Andrea Gibson, who's our budget director, and Neil Carre, who's our Deputy Chief of Staff, for joining us tonight to give me a hand in answering your questions. Paul?
All right. I'm going to begin actually with a comment. This comes off the website, but I think it sets the pace for the evening. And it says, Toni, sharing your budget with all 5.3 millions is the first step in raising the window so we can look in and see where our tax dollars are going. And that is what we're trying to do. So with a comment, let me go on to some of the questions. This comes from Twitter this evening. It comes from Serge, and I think it's a good place to start because he asks where does most of the deficit come from?
Our $268 million deficit is composed basically of two elements. One is the losses from our efforts to roll back the sales tax that deprives us of revenue. But the principal one really is shortfalls in revenue in our public health system, our health and hospital system. And let me just say, I am very grateful to Dr. Ram Raju, who is the Chief Executive Officer of our healthcare system. He came on board a year ago in October. He's not only a fine physician, but a good manager and a person who's focused on the twin things that we need, more efficiency and effectiveness in our healthcare system and improved quality. So I'm very grateful to him. One of the things he's done is to try to improve our billing system. Our billing was kind of scattershot or non-existent. And he's worked very hard over the last 9 months to try to get a billing system in order so that we could charge appropriately for the services that we deliver. And of course, that's one way to make our healthcare system sustainable. But he is a fine manager, and I have great confidence in him. And in this next budget cycle, we're going to make some significant improvements, we think, in our healthcare system, both in its efficiency and its quality.
This next question, it may put you on the spot a little bit, but I think it adds on. It's an appropriate place to go after that answer. Is the deficit the county faces a product of mismanagement during the Stroger administration or the struggling economy or both?
Well, first of all, I'd say that the problems we've got are not just Todd's, frankly. I think over time, our workforce was allowed to expand at a rate that we couldn't sustain over time. In other words, there was a mismatch between what we could really pay for and the number of employees that we had. So I wouldn't lay this all on Todd's doorstep. I think it's been a problem for quite some time. And in fairness, as I said, it's an issue that we should have dealt with long ago and made the appropriate cuts, not hired so many people. We didn't. I mean, that's just the fact. So here's where we are today. I'm sorry, what was the second part of the question, Paul?
Or is it the struggling economy, or both?
Well, it's really the economy as well. This is a hard time for government at all levels, whether you're at the local government, at state, at the federal level. When the economy is struggling as it is today, you don't have the revenues, you don't have the resources that you have in good times. And as a result, you have to make very difficult choices and decisions.
All right. One of the things I think that swept you into office, one would argue, was that sales tax, that the 2-penny sales tax and all that. So lots of questions about that. I'm going to summarize it really with this. Have you considered not rolling back the balance of the sales tax this year, just waiting to do it later? How much money would that be worth, and can't you use those funds elsewhere?
I made a commitment on the campaign trail that we were going to roll back the Stroger sales tax increase. And before I even took office, the 1-penny increase was reduced to 50 cents. When I came in office, I promised that in our first 2 budgets, we'd reduce the rest of the 50 cents, get it completely out of the way, and we have. I think it's really important that elected officials keep their promises. It's really important. I said 50 cents, I meant half a cent. But anyway, it's really important to keep your promises. If you say, I'm going to roll this back when I get in office, that's what you're obligated to do. And what I always said on the campaign trail was having the highest sales tax in the country was very bad for our working families, and it was also very bad for our businesses that have to compete with Lake and DuPage and Will County or Indiana. So in order to help support our economy, it was really important that we not only keep our promise, but help out our working families and our businesses. And as to the particular amounts of all, Andrea, can you help me out there?
Yes, the amount related to the entire 1% sales tax is roughly about $400 million, about $100 million per 0.25%. So what has been significant about the rollback is it has been staged so that it's not all at once, it's not hitting us all at once. So in terms of this budget, it has an impact of about $87 million because we're phasing it in.
So, and let me just do my own follow-up with that. You said you came in, it was a campaign promise, and then here seems to be one of the constituents willing to give on that, if it would help. Do you review it from a political or non-political standpoint, and have you thought about it and saying maybe it is something we should do? Or would the political ramifications be too severe?
I think it was a cornerstone of my campaign, and not keeping that promise, which was, I said, the cornerstone of our campaign, I think would be extremely detrimental politically, aside from the fact that I think it's the right thing to do.
Okay, let's go to Twitter. Once again, the hashtag #TellToni. All right, you want to get your questions in, you want to do it soon so we get it asked. Tom says, should property tax increases be on the table?
My view is everything has to be on the table. We have a $267 million gap to close. We're going to have to figure out how to do that as responsibly as we can. Local governments, unlike the federal governments, can't have unbalanced budgets. You have to have a balanced budget. And we need your help as residents, as citizens, for ideas on, as I said, reasonable ways in which we could cut costs and reasonable things we could do to raise revenue. Do you have any particular things you want to share, Andrea, on that subject?
Sure. I think the President mentioned we're in the process of evaluating a number of ideas, and the focus of any ideas right now should be ones that make a structural difference to our budget, ones that will be reoccurring more than 1 year. So we've been talking to the public whenever we have an opportunity. We had a public hearing on the preliminary budget. We're looking for suggestions that we can research now and look to see if it makes sense to fold into the budget.
All right, a website question saying, Toni, they call you Toni.
That's fine. It's my name.
Look at everything the county operates, and that's the key word. What about outsourcing what you can to private companies?
Well, first of all, our main business is healthcare. 35% of our budget is healthcare. 39% of our budget is criminal justice. We're looking at opportunities to have managed competition, that is to give our employees an opportunity to compete perhaps with private vendors in some arenas. But our general goal, frankly, is to run our county as efficiently and as effectively as we can with the employees that we have. So managed competition rather than outsourcing is the direction in which we've gone. But again, our principal focus is let's get the folks who are working for the county at present to step up and improve the quality of services we deliver.
All right. Kyle wants to know from Twitter, how does the Medicaid expansion waiver program impact the budget?
There is an Affordable Care Act, which is what's sometimes called Obamacare, which will come into effect in January of 2014. There is an opportunity now, and actually it's an opportunity that has existed for a little while, to get a waiver and to start enrolling people who will be eligible for expanded Medicaid in January of 2014, start getting them enrolled in a health care program right now. And actually, there are several states, New Jersey, Texas, California, that have already done this. And we're hoping to secure a waiver by the end of September, which would enable us to enroll up to 250,000 people who will be eligible for Medicaid in January of 2014 right now in our healthcare system. Now, one of the problems we have is that many people come to our emergency room for their primary care. And this is a very expensive way to deliver primary care. It makes much more sense to have a doctor at a community facility delivering primary care than for people to come to an emergency room and look for that care. So what we're trying to do is encourage the folks who have been coming into our system without insurance, but who will now be eligible for Medicaid, encourage them to become a part of our healthcare system, to have us as their healthcare home in this transition period, and to provide them with primary care at the appropriate place, and instead of having them come to us just in the emergency room or just come for admission to the hospital, frankly. So we've got a lot of work to do in enrolling people in this transition period, but I'm hopeful that the federal government will grant us the waiver and we can begin to do that and provide much more effective care to the people who desperately need it.
Cook County Hospital is critical, obviously, in the healthcare system, so lots of comments about that. This person writes in and says, Cook County Hospital and the entire system as a whole has to start paying their own way. And as he sees it, they have three choices. One, raise rates across the board on everything to reflect current costs. Or two, really cut costs by whatever means are necessary to bring costs in line with those revenues. Or three, eliminate entire programs, a last resort, but may be necessary. What do you see happening?
Well, our healthcare system has always had a tremendous subsidy from the taxpayers of Cook County. I think that's appropriate. I think as part of our mission, which is the delivery of health care to those who are uninsured and underinsured. But in these difficult times when resources are so scarce, we have to manage those resources well, and we have to deliver services as effectively and efficiently as we can. That's why I have such great confidence in Dr. Raju and the sensitivity and the management skills that he's brought to our healthcare system.
Anybody else?
I think I just mentioned that we've already done some work in reducing the subsidy to the healthcare system. When we took office, the subsidy was over $300 million in previous years. And last year, that subsidy, and correct me if I'm wrong, was cut down to about $250 million, while not reducing patient care. So as the President mentioned, looking at different efficiencies within the healthcare system, looking at different non-essential contracts, we've been able to cut expenditures there without cutting patient care significantly, across the board.
This question comes from somebody sort of within this county system in the legal world. He says, I can only speak for our agency, but there's a perception that upper and mid-level managers earning in excess of 6 figures are quite numerous. Trial lawyers, investigators, secretaries have always known what to do to make things run smoothly. They don't need a lot of supervision. What about looking at salaries and doing the right thing?
One of the things that happened after we completed our first budget was we said we need to figure out how to perform better. And we turned to performance management. And that's simply the idea that you get people together, you decide what your goals are going to be, and then what the milestones are toward meeting those goals. And one of the things we did was put everybody in the public safety arena. So that's the chief judge, the state's attorney, the public defender, the clerk of the court, and the sheriff, and said, what are your goals going to be? And their goal is to try to reduce the jail population. So we're trying to figure out how we can best use the resources we have, both personnel and financial, to reduce our jail population. And we would be grateful to any county employees who have ideas about how we can more effectively deliver that service. Again, our hashtag is Tell Toni, and if you have any particular suggestions, we'll take them in whatever detail you can give them to us. We'd be grateful for them.
So you are using performance measurements to determine the job. Are decisions made by management or unions? Let me set that up. I'm reading from a question here, and ordinarily I cut these way down, as you can see. I want to read you a little bit of this, because this is a personal story involving somebody who worked for the county. The county should utilize performance measurements to determine who is doing their job. That being said, management, not union, should have final say in who stays and who goes. Inefficiencies are created when you have systems where seniority and not performance are rewarded, costing the county tens of millions of dollars. How do I know this? The county laid me off last November. I'm in my late 20s. I hold a master's degree, computer literate, can multitask. I'm a fast learner and a positive attitude. I was Employee of the Year, nominated for Employee of the Year because of my work ethics. The people who don't do their job, have a negative attitude, sleep at their desk, cause problems, provide bad customer service, don't come to work, but they still have a job. But I want to make it clear, I hold no grudges towards this administration. You guys are doing a fantastic job. I find that to be a fascinating comment. It's good feelings. He has faith, but he raises a question.
Well, one of the difficulties of our county system of government is that we have, while I'm the chief executive, we have 11 separately elected officials. And so while I have control, direct control over 2,000 of our 23,000 employees, the rest of our employees are under the jurisdiction and supervision of separately elected officials. So in terms of lawyers, the public defender is within our purview, but the other lawyers who work for the County of Cook are spread around in other offices. So I can't always make the changes that I might think are appropriate or that this employee clearly thinks are appropriate. But what we're trying to do is work with the separately elected officials, work with folks within the President's office to try to figure out how we can deliver services better. And we depend on the cooperation and the effective implementation of these ideas on our separately elected officials.
So one way, as I watch our time, we don't have all night here, but I put together sort of a lightning round of suggestions. So they're kind of quick. And I thought I'll throw them out to you, and let me just get your reaction. Some are pretty, simple, basic. I'm going to start with a really simple one. Somebody said, what about a $1 tax on riverboat entrance?
I'll ask my budget director to respond to that because I don't even know if it's legal.
Well, we'd have to look at that. I don't know how much revenue that would generate.
But there's a suggestion then,
sure.
right?
We have a casino in Cook County, and that's Des Plaines. I'm not sure that we have others. Is only Des Plaines?
I think it's only Des Plaines.
Well, I think the mayor's trying to do something about that for you.
Yes. Well, one of the things that we hope and expect is that if there's a casino in the city of Chicago, that a share of the revenue will come to the County of Cook because we provide both healthcare services and criminal justice services that are impacted by casino locations.
Some of these suggestions, I think, sort of incorporate also putting people to work. What about providing AmeriCorps and VISTA opportunities in the county, allowing federal national funds to be used and services provided, volunteer opportunities?
We'll refer that to our human resources folks.
Okay.
Sounds like a good idea.
All right. What about related, I suppose? Consider using more youth, young adults to help clean neighborhoods, parks, public facilities, establish youth cleaning crews at minimum wage, and increase SWAP, SWAP, community service hours to help keep the communities clean at a reduced rate.
Again, our principal function is healthcare and criminal justice, and those kinds of services are more often provided by the local municipality, your city, town, or village. We have some resources to employ young people through our job training programs, but those kind of initiatives are usually local ones rather than county ones.
I think this one's already been addressed in the state level, but somebody suggests taxing tobacco.
The state dramatically increased the taxes on tobacco. I think they added another $1 to the $1 a pack this year. As I said, nothing's off the table. We'll consider it.
And related to that, somebody said, what about raising taxes dramatically on, and these are luxury issues, boats, jewelry, airline tickets, alcohol, the sin taxes, the luxury taxes. What is your philosophy about that?
We raised taxes last year on alcohol and boats and what else did we do?
Use tax. We did the other tobacco products.
Loose tobacco,
yes.
Cigars, cigarillos.
And the the use tax, both on if you're selling it, if you're purchasing a car at a dealership, and also if you're buying it via Craigslist, so there was a level playing field there. But it was a fairly modest amount of money in terms of revenue increase compared to the sales tax rollback, for example.
Right.
Dan asks on Twitter, county layoffs hurt the economy, reducing the tax base. Are there plans for any new taxes, or is it just going to be cut, cut, cut?
No, we're going to be raising revenue. It's just a question of determining how we're going to do that and what specific revenues we want to raise. So it'll be a combination of cuts and increases in revenue.
Okay, and can you specify where your thoughts are for? There is one suggestion that suggests that the county, this is actually probably a little fun, but that we sell coffee cups and water bottles, and I just want to point out that clearly that is not being done with my styrofoam cup this evening, so not sure how much money that would bring in. But where's your thought about the new revenues?
Well, actually we're entertaining ideas now, and that's one of the reasons we're doing this. We're looking for people to suggest to us things we might do. Clearly, whatever we decide, there's going to be some opposition and some pain. We want to be as equitable as we possibly can about it.
Because you're on my show, Politics Tonight, the other night, I asked you this question, then I want to ask you now, which is this at all a publicity stunt? When you're asking for suggestions and we want to know, are you really listening, or do you have in mind as the president, I know what I'm going to do, we're just going to ask these questions?
No, you know, in the first place, it makes sense to cast as wide net as possible when you're looking for new ideas. The more people you talk to, the more input you get, the more likely you are to get good ideas. That was surely my experience as alderman, and it's even more true at this level. So my position has always been to cast your net as widely as possible, include everybody in your request for help and support, and that way you're likely to get a higher quality of response and more breadth of responses.
And Paul, if I can just step in, I just want to highlight about 4 examples of ideas that have come in from either our employees or from the public during the last 2 budget processes. One of them was a workplace wellness initiative submitted by one of our employees that we just initiated, and we just had our first wellness council meeting this past week. Another one was this asset marketing, this municipal marketing initiative, which could potentially bring in millions of dollars if we market some of our different assets that we have around. An additional one by our facilities management team and a frontline employee was increasing the energy efficiency of the county, which has saved up to $2 million a year. And then there have been also been numerous juvenile justice reforms, jail population reforms that have been suggested that we ended up implementing. So these ideas really do come to fruition, and we do vet them.
I'm not sure all of our viewers will know what asset marketing is. Why don't you explain that just a little bit?
Sure. So as we look at our assets throughout the county, they could be our forest preserve trails, they could be our buildings, it could be space that we have on the side of our highways. There is an opportunity which other counties and municipalities throughout the United States have looked at to market these assets, to use them for advertising, and in a very strategic and responsible way. And there is revenue there which will help in terms of layoffs. It'll help reduce that number. It'll help reduce the number of cuts that we have to make. So if we can look at the assets that we have and look at a way to market them and provide opportunities to private companies to come in and provide sponsorships or advertising, we can generate some revenue which could significantly help our budget in the next few years.
Okay, Bridget asks on Twitter, low-level drug arrests cost Cook County taxpayers $78 million annually. The city recently voted to decriminalize marijuana. Will this affect the budget?
We hope and pray. It's very expensive to detain and incarcerate people who have low-level drug offenses. We're talking about marijuana possession here, because what the city decided to do and what the county has decided to do is ticket people for possession of low levels of marijuana rather than detain them. And this should result in substantial savings. And it's also a good idea because we need to treat substance abuse in this country as a public health crisis rather than a criminal justice issue. 83% of the people who come into our jail have illicit substances in their body, and only 10 to 15% of the men and 40% of the women get any drug treatment when they're in jail. So if we're going to deal with the problems associated with substance abuse, we need to do that outside of our criminal justice system. It's both more effective and less expensive to do it that way.
All right, once again, for viewers, the hashtag #TellToni, TELLTONI, is what you want to use to get your questions in. Do it soon so we have time to get to them. Minority Entrepreneur, that's their Twitter name, asks, how can the county encourage advanced manufacturing with property tax incentives similar to the Chicago TIF program?
Well, first of all, we're focused on economic development. I said our two main missions are healthcare and criminal justice, but one of the first things I did when I got elected was try to increase our focus on economic development. So we created a Bureau of Economic Development, and we put our capital planning and our community development and our building and zoning departments and our workforce development all in the same department because we wanted to concentrate those resources and focus. We're also creating a Council of Economic Advisors composed of people who are business leaders, who've had substantial success in business, that try to help us figure out how we can be more effective with our county resources and what we need to do in cooperation with the business community and the academic community and other elected officials, not just in Cook County actually, but across the region, to strengthen northern Cook, southeastern Wisconsin, northwest Illinois, because they're all Indiana, because they're all part of the Chicagoland region. And we need to figure out how to strengthen that whole region rather than just steal jobs from each other, from county to county or from Wisconsin to Illinois or Indiana to Illinois. We've got to strengthen our whole region because we're all tied together economically.
Okay.
If I could just mention some of the initiatives that are underway in terms of capacity building, not just for advanced manufacturing, but for businesses throughout the county. The county is an economic player. We procure over $1 billion worth of goods and services per year, and we've worked to make it more transparent and accountable. But really for businesses that are doing business with Cook County, we really want to make sure that we lower the barriers to entry and increase their access to capital. That's how businesses in Cook County can grow. So we rolled out a couple things within the past few months that will really help businesses do that. One was a small business financing summit where we brought together a group of banks and we brought together vendors, and the banks committed to providing up to $200 million worth of financing to these vendors, which is very critical for any small business owner. The second thing we've done at the county is we've increased payment acceleration towards these vendors. So what we've done for a lot of these small contractors who don't get paid for months is we've created incentives for these larger companies to pay them, which also, again, helps their cash flow and helps them increase their capital. And then there are a couple other, insurance and bonding programs that we've rolled out that have been innovative and new, which will help smaller construction companies grow. Our owner-controlled insurance program and our bonding alternative program, which, again, like I said, are innovative programs. They're new at the county and will really, hopefully, further small business growth in the region.
Maybe a related kind of suggestion, but what about increasing opportunities to conduct county business and this kind of online and let the bidding process and all that be online, save money?
I can't tell you what our initiatives are in that way. One of the things we have done is reverse auctions, and we've done that online as a way of securing goods and services at the lowest possible cost. But perhaps, Andrew, you have some other suggestions?
I was going to say exactly the same thing. We had a reverse auction at the beginning of this year that ended up saving the county several $1 million just because of the increased competitiveness that kind of process
Why don't you
allows.
explain what a reverse auction is?
So a reverse auction, essentially you can go online from anywhere and you bid against one another live, and then there's a closing point, so it's kind of live competition rather than submitting a paper bid and not necessarily competing against the other vendors. So that really
Which means those numbers are coming down, not going up.
That's right. So we're looking to do a lot more in the procurement arena that will help us with that.
This might be interesting. I don't know the reality of this, but what about developing methods to collect property taxes on foreclosed properties? Maybe it's done, but it says banks should be held responsible for taxes during the foreclosure period. What about going after that?
I'm not sure what steps we're taking to do that. And Andrea, do you have a clue? Because I don't.
I don't on this. So going
after
after the property
banks
taxes?
Going after the banks. I think the owner of record is responsible for the taxes, and if you don't pay your taxes, the property can be sold in a tax sale, and then you're charged interest on a monthly basis. I think it's 1.5% until such time as you either pay up the tax buyer or the tax buyer gets the property. So there are incentives to pay your taxes, and I think that I'm not sure exactly how this plays out for foreclosed properties. Okay.
Any relationship with the tollway? There were a couple of suggestions about the tollway and consider implementing tolls. They've given you some routes, 88, 59, far west, west suburban Cook County areas. But that's a separate authority.
Yeah, there's the Illinois Tollway Authority, and that's a state entity.
Okay. Well, they're thinking, thinking outside the box. You can't blame them for that.
No.
Okay, I also want to, let me come back to here on Twitter. Once again, the hashtag Tell Toni to get your questions in. And where that just ran away from me. Excuse me, just give me 1 second here till I found it. It rolled down a little bit. Could Cook County save money by CCHHS offering outpatient mental health with 1115 waivers instead of just treating mental illness in jail?
Well, one of the things that's going to happen with our 1115 waiver is that we will provide mental health services for the people who are newly enrolled in Medicaid. And we will do that through our federally qualified health center partners. And one of the things that is required of us in this Medicaid waiver is expanding our primary care. We don't have enough primary care clinics of our own, and they're not distributed equally across the county, so we're going to have partnerships with FQHCs, the federally qualified health centers, and they will be helping us to provide mental health services.
I think this question probably is not accurate in terms of what you're doing, but it's a perception, so I'm going to ask it the way it was asked.
Sure.
Why are you trying to eliminate the unincorporated areas of the county? You tried to tax us, now you want us to be swallowed up by the nearest town. You're the only government we have. We have no town boards or village boards or city councils to handle our business. We don't want to live in a town and have all the extra taxes for services we don't want.
Well, actually, the reason we're doing this is that people in unincorporated Cook basically get a free ride. 5.3 million people in Cook County, 5.3 million. 100,000 of them, only 100,000, live in unincorporated Cook. They get police services, they get services from our building and zoning folks, they get a variety of county services, but they don't pay extra for them. If you live in the city of Chicago, or you live in Evanston or Oak Park or Calumet City, you pay taxes to your city or town or village for police protection, for the functions of city government. If you live in unincorporated Cook, you get those as a county taxpayer, but you don't pay extra for them, and we provide those services. All the rest of us in Cook County provide those services to you. So what we've said is, everybody should pay. Nobody should get a free ride. So what we need to do is figure out how we can how the county can be compensated for the services that it delivers to unincorporated Cook. One way to do that is to annex these parcels by the nearest city, town, or village. Another is to have what we call special service districts and have people in those special service districts pay a little extra for the services that they get, which people in other cities and towns and villages pay through their local property taxes. So it's just a question of equity and fairness. I believe that's an important issue to the other 5.2 million people who are in incorporated areas.
Is there any way for the Cook County Sheriff's Department to take over the Cook County Forest Preserve? It's only certain times of the year the Cook County Forest Preserve police handle calls for service. Not too many calls at midnight. Sheriff's police ought to be able to handle it.
Well, when I was campaigning, this was something that I thought might be a good idea. However, when I got into the job, what I discovered is that in our Forest Preserve district, the officers there perform a very different function than sheriff's police. They're more like the rangers that you would find at the National Park Service. They do a lot of management of our guests, our visitors, our residents. They work on kind of preserving and maintaining the natural environment. That's not what you do as a peace officer. So it's more like a ranger, a park ranger function than it really is a police officer. They have police powers, and occasionally they have to arrest people, that's true. But basically they are like park rangers in the National Park Service, and that's a completely different expectation than the sheriff's police.
What about taxing the internet and film industries? Of course, we try and give incentives to the film industry to get them to come here, so that's a double-edged sword.
Yes, it surely is. It's something that, Andrea is a very organized person, and she's sitting here taking notes on all of this, so we'll look at all of it. I think that that's probably something that's going to be pretty problematic.
I'll bet if you don't, you might get a role in Boss. Maybe they would.
A bit part, huh?
We can try. This is a loaded question, all sorts of things. You take it how you want to take it. A Sun-Times article several weeks ago pointed out there are over 525,000 illegal immigrants in Illinois, or 4.1% of the population. Illinois has become a safe harbor for illegals, and the budget part. I don't want one dime of my tax dollars going to provide free health care on an ongoing basis. If emergency health care is required for a life-threatening condition, shouldn't there be notification of the illegal status, efforts to take to deport? We're flat broke, and we have to stop providing services to non-residents.
I'm very proud of the fact that our healthcare system takes anyone who walks in the door. They don't ask if you have insurance. They don't ask about your citizenship status. They provide care for you. And I think that's an appropriate response. Our mission is to provide health care to the uninsured and the underinsured, and mainly to run our public safety system. That's 3/4 of our budget. I realize that this individual is probably frustrated by the decision that we've made, not just here in Cook County, but in the city of Chicago, to be as compassionate as we possibly can to people who are here and who are undocumented. I think that's the appropriate response, and I disagree with this person.
Okay. Now, we still have a little time left, not a whole heck of a lot, so once again, the hashtag on Twitter, hashtag tell Toni, TELLTONI. If you want to get a question in, you're thinking about, it's kind of like calling in a pledge, you got to do it now.
Or you lose the opportunity.
Or you lose the opportunity, exactly, so be sure to do that. What about getting rid of consultant contracts in the Cook County health system? And they give an example. HiQ Analytics has been receiving in excess of $114,000 for the last 2 years for HIPAA consultant, but the county has not had a HIPAA privacy officer director in that time.
When Dr. Raju came in to run the healthcare system in October, one of the things that concerned him was the significant amount of money that was being paid to consultants. And he has worked over the last 9-10 months to try to reduce that and to hire people and put them on the county payroll to do these jobs rather than to pay consultants to do them, because his view was that that was more effective in the long term and actually it would save us money in the short term. Did you want to respond to that, Andrea?
Sure. I agree with what the president has said there. He's looked at a lot of consultant contracts. I think he's not done looking at the consultant contracts to see where there are opportunities. I know he's been reviewing that for this budget, and there are several vendors that won't be paid by the health system going forward. So I think that's an ongoing issue and review that's taking place.
Yeah,
There's been significant progress.
It was characteristic of the previous administration to outsource a lot of the work and to have all these consultants. And Dr. Roger believes that we can provide the services more effectively and efficiently by hiring people ourselves and having direct control over their activities.
Okay. Another big chunk, besides, in addition to the healthcare system, of course, the justice system.
Right.
This question says, how many new investigator support staff will be hired for the public defender's office? As you know, there's an excess of 240,000 criminal cases annually. Statistically, 85% of those cases are pled, leaving 36,000 cases for a staff of less than 350 trial lawyers.
Well, the public defender is under the purview of the president's office, so we're going to look carefully at those operations and work closely with the public defender on this issue. Let me just say, one of the things we're trying to do is keep people out of the criminal justice system. That's why we've supported ticketing for marijuana, for example. That's why I have always strongly supported dealing with our substance abuse issues as a public health crisis and trying to get people treatment on demand rather than having people enter our criminal justice system as a result of their substance abuse. So we're trying to reduce the number of people who come in the door at the jail in a variety of ways. And we're also trying to find alternatives to detention for people who are enmeshed in our criminal justice system. So we have, for example, made arrangements with places like Safe Haven and Haymarket to house people who need a permanent address so they can be on electronic monitoring, for example, rather than in the jail. Or they need drug treatment. And Haymarket, for example, is one of the best known in our region in providing drug treatment services. So we're looking to try to reduce the number of people who come in the door. One way to deal with your problem is to staff up. Another way is to reduce the workload. And we're working hard to reduce the workload for all of the folks in the criminal justice system.
Budget suggestion with regard to the courthouses. You have space in all your courthouses, Markham, Bridgeview, Skokie, Maywood, in lower-level canteen. Why not rent the space to restaurant chains like McDonald's or Subway, charge them a lease fee, percentage of the revenue?
We should look at that.
The budget director is carefully making a note of this, yes.
Well, and I do want to mention that we did go out to bid, and we have been working with a firm, U.S. Equities, that's providing sort of a real estate allocation study. When we walked in the door, we did not know what real estate assets we had at hand, and that's something that they're helping us do, working directly with our staff so that we can consolidate real estate space and make sure that we're using real estate space for the right purposes. And if there are opportunities for retail, then that's something that we would explore.
Let me just talk about the U.S. Equities study. What we did was, we walked in the door, we said, okay, what do we own? So we got a list of parcel identification numbers. That's the way in which we keep track of property. But it didn't say this is a vacant lot, this has a building on it, or what kind of building it has. So one of the things that U.S. Equities has to do for us is describe everything that we own and its condition, so we can figure out what needs to be rehabbed, what needs perhaps to be replaced, and we're doing that because we had no information when we walked in the door. So we're trying to get kind of our house in order so we can figure out and prioritize the work that needs to be done on our properties and what's really surplus, and ways in which we can more effectively take advantage of opportunities that we have for space within our buildings, as Neil described.
Are any cafeterias in these buildings now? Are they money makers for the county?
I don't know.
I don't think there are any cafeterias.
I mean, the food's not good. I just don't know if
I know that there are at the hospital, but there's not in these
I think
buildings.
at the courthouses there are machines.
Okay.
Vending machines.
Okay. There was another suggestion in here basically about, this was sort of a Bernie Stone suggestion. I remember Alderman Stone for many years. He wanted to have people be able to sort of name things. And so here you are, this person talks about selling restaurant space, but there was another suggestion here about what about simply allowing or selling naming rights to various things that are appropriate as a way of bringing in revenue.
I think, as Neil spoke earlier, that's one of the things that we're looking at as part of our asset management.
Okay.
And not asset management, marketing.
Municipal marketing.
Asset
Municipal
marketing. Thank you.
Okay. A property tax question, and we probably should have Joe Barrios here for this, but basically here's somebody getting upset saying taxes are going up. He personally, I paid $295,000 for my home. It was reassessed. It's now worth $205,000, but my taxes went up. A little bit of the explanation about how that gets calculated, but the county's role in property taxes.
The county has taken the same amount out of the pot since 1996, $720 million. Every year, $720 million for the last, whatever that is. How many years?
I think it was 16 years.
16 years, for the last 16 years. So if you look at your property tax bill, and I'm a teacher, if you look at your property tax bill, the highest amount always goes to your public schools. So the county has kept its property tax take flat for 16 years, but your property taxes have gone up. It's because other units of government have raised taxes.
Schools take them other areas.
Schools, your city, town, or village,
right.
Whatever.
Okay. Well, Kyle took our advice about getting those last-minute questions in here with just a few minutes to go. So Kyle says, has the open data set been released for the preliminary budget? If not, will it be? It would help to know where money's being spent.
We put our preliminary budget online. I mean, last year we put our preliminary budget, our final budget, online. We've tried to be as transparent as possible. We put our bidding opportunities online. We have provided an incredible amount of information to our constituents and the general public through web-based information. Did you want to add something to that,
No,
Neil?
if it has not been, I'm not sure if it has been released yet on our open data website, but if it hasn't, we'll make sure to get it up this month.
Okay.
Just a couple of moments left. I think it's a good, and there's no other questions here to pose from Twitter. I think we've gone through the main ones. So let me just ask you, the process, where do things go from here? So here we are tonight. You've gathered a lot of ideas. Andrea, writing a lot of them down. Now what?
Andrea and her staff will do their best with the help of Neil and others to vet some of these ideas, to figure out, hey, what are the implications? First of all, can we really do this by law? What are the implications of doing it? And so we'll whittle the list down and add it to our internal list already of things we're considering doing, and kind of figure out what makes the most sense. The
battles are famous through the years, yours and other administrations, when you have to go to each of your department heads, the sheriff, the prosecutor, and say, look, guys, 17% cut, or whatever that percentage is.
Right.
How sensitive are you to the particular departments that are cutting? Because everybody has their concerns and why they need the money. So how does that come into play?
Well, there are departments within the President's office, and then there's separately elected officials. And my responsibility is to prepare the budget and to be sure that we have the votes to pass it. What I have said for the last 3 years is this is going to be shared sacrifice. That's what we say every year. That's what we try to do. Nobody's off scot-free, and nobody's alone. So that is the message that I have delivered, both internally to people who are under our purview, and it's the message that I've delivered to the separately elected officials, and I have continued to tell them.
All right. My thanks to you, President Preckwinkle, for your openness in having this interaction with your constituents. Andrea, Neil, thank you as well for joining us. Any final words? Only a couple of seconds left.
Well, first of all, I'm very grateful to you for doing this, and grateful to all of the folks out there who have devoted time to trying to learn more about county government. I'm grateful to you for your interest and your help.
And for me, this is as close I'm ever going to be to being Cook County Board President, because I get to sit up here and it's quiet when they're not here. I'm Paul Listig from WGN News. Thanks for watching, everybody. We appreciate your participation. Good night.